Hi everyone, my name's Pieta Valentine. I've written 2 books, The Resident's Voice from a Dementia Unit and The Resident's Rise from a Dementia Unit. This session is on valuing staff in a dementia unit. The previous video I've just done is on anger and how to help vulnerable residents in a dementia facility. But similarly, staff are vulnerable in dementia facilities. When you have angry residents, if they're being angry with other residents and you are witnessing that with lashing out, punching, pushing over, pushing the resident over so they fall, and all the terrible results of that with fractured hips and fractured arms and things, if you're witnessing that out in the lounge, definitely and absolutely that same angry resident will be doing the same to staff. Now you can imagine how difficult that is for staff. A lot of staff, especially here in New Zealand, are small framed, short. You know, they're not big, strong, 6-foot Scandinavian women. I mean, they're half the size. And so it's really difficult for them to be able to manage and do this work, let alone without someone being aggressive. And also often what happens, they're in the room alone with an angry man, for example, and they have to deal with that on their own often. You know, sometimes they can call and help if there's been 1 or 2 instances, but often if it's spontaneous, they have to cope with it, you know, straight up right there. So, you know, there's so many injuries the staff have to put up with, you know, especially squeezing, bruising, hitting out, lashing out, and the staff tend to get sore necks and backs from lifting, shifting, moving anyway. OOS, occupational overuse syndrome injuries, they get that as part of the work anyway. That's a work-related injury, but in terms of actually being physically attacked by residents, yeah, they get big bruises, big welts, it's painful. Like, you know, some staff end up crying because it's so painful. And I've actually had this experience myself with a resident attacking me, and it's no fun. I mean, it's traumatic. It's traumatic. But of course, in a dementia facility, as I mentioned with the anger video, there's no policing, there's no, security guards. Like, they have security guards in libraries, don't they? Well, they do here in New Zealand. I mean, surely you'd think a dementia facility with angry men in it, they'd have guards there, but there's no provision apparently. And, you know, maybe it's an issue that's not considered or spoken about enough. But anyway, as a relative, again, what you can do if you witness, you know, if there's an angry resident, you can ask the staff, or if it's your own father, you say, look, are the staff being injured because of my father? And if they say yes, then that's good, because you've got that information, you know. Otherwise, what often happens is that staff tend to just sort of blow over it. You know, oh, it's okay, you know, yes, he's been a bit upset, he's been a bit aggressive, but no, we can manage it, we're all right. You know, they tend to sort of gloss over it because they don't want to make a fuss for the residents. I mean, they don't want to make a fuss, for the families, you know, the fee-paying families. They just want to just keep the waters calm, so to speak, and they put up with so much. So if you as a relative are aware that your father is aggressive and he's attacking these staff, and you ask them that and they give the details of it, and ask them to give the details, well, what sort of injuries is he causing, so she can describe those, the charge nurse or clinical manager can describe those. Then as a relative, you're more likely to be able to accept, well, that's Dad, something will have to happen, you know, for Dad to be contained. Either he'll have to be medicated, you know, or he'll have to go to a higher level facility where there's restraints, and maybe they're the 2 choices that need to be made. But at least you're informed, you're educated, you're upskilled, you know what's going on, and you can work with the team, with the medical team and the doctor on this, on what the best approach is with your father, if it's got completely out of hand. So that's one thing you can do to be of service to the community, you know, so that your father's not attacking staff. You know, they can often go off with these injuries and ACC and not be able to get back to work again because of sore necks and backs. You know, it affects their whole future too. So when you're more aware of these things, and it won't be common knowledge, because these things aren't generally discussed too much. It's just, you know, talked of as an incident. You know, an incident happened, but details aren't generally given. So if you can delve deeper and find out, then that would be a great help. So valuing staff. Staff are fabulous, fantastic. To work in a dementia unit, honestly, it's not just anger, but the actual physical load of the work. 9 residents a day, each of them have to cope with. They have to get up early, arrive at work by 7 and be just onto the case, you know, working flat out from the minute they get in the unit till the minute they leave. And it's not just one job at a time, is it? It's like, you know, lunch, breakfast, dinner, morning, afternoon tea. People in between are shouting, falling, screaming, needing to be toileted. It's multitasking all day. It's very high demand. And then, of course, within that, you know, the staff are pleasant to relatives, you know, they're nice to the residents, they're needing to put on that nice, friendly smile the whole time, because it's a public position when they're out of the room, you know, dealing with the public. So, and not for the public to see that they're under dire stress a lot of the time. So that's why it's good for you to know what happens behind closed doors, so that you can appreciate the staff. And most relatives do. They're very good to staff, but they don't necessarily know the full details of what happens behind closed doors, so to speak. So I'm just sort of mentioning a few instances of that. And you know, verbal appreciation, cards and food at Christmas time. You know, relatives actually are really generous at Christmas time. They bring in Christmas cakes and home baking and chocolates, and staff really appreciate it, especially, you know, if they're working double shifts, which they often are. Can you believe it? Doing double shifts and more than once a week, often, when they're short-staffed and COVID's going on, or there's a bug or something, and if people are off sick and you can't get staff, they work double shifts doing this demanding work, you know, 1, 2, 3 days of double shifts. I don't know how they cope with it. I just do not know how they manage it. But if food is supplied, it's a great help, because they don't have to cook at home, at their flat or wherever they're living. They don't have to think about food, and if a pizza's brought in, or a cake, or, you know, a nice dish of some sort, the morale goes up, the appreciation goes up. They have something to eat, which is good, something extra to eat. And that's one thing as a relative that you can do, which really helps a lot. So there'll be other things that you can pick up on at the unit as to how you can help the staff. You know, for example, getting your mother a cup of tea. If you can see another resident there wants a cup of tea at an odd time and is asking for one, you can get them a cup of tea too. If someone's needing to be directed to the toilet or the bathroom, you can direct them there. There's always little things that you can do in a dementia unit to help staff that relatives can easily do, just directing and guiding people, telling them the time. There's always lots of different requests from residents, and if you as a relative are answering those requests, it saves time for the staff, and they'll appreciate that. And that's one really practical, positive way of being able to value them. So this is the end of the series now, or the session on how you can appreciate staff in all these dementia facilities. They're wonderful people. They do so much. They work so hard, and they deserve our value, and they deserve to be protected from injuries by aggressive residents. Thank you.